Welcome to Mad Marketing TV. My name is Jeff Ogden, the host of the show, and we're really excited about today's guest, Paul Dunay, the CMO of Network Insights. Paul today is going to speak with us about keeping up with the change in B2B marketing. Five-time author, blogger, speaker, and award-winning B2B marketer. So let's welcome Paul to the show.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited about these topics because I think they're really important to B2B marketers. So the first question I'd like to ask you, Paul, I know in your career you've worked for some very large B2B tech firms. And recently you jumped to a social media analytics firm, more of a startup. That's a big change in your career. What kind of lessons did you learn from that?
Oh my God, a huge amount of lessons there. First of all, as the CMO of a small tech firm, you've got all the demands of, regular marketing team, on your shoulders, and you're really pressure testing where you're good, where your skills may be a little bit lacking, right? So I found myself sort of boning up on things that I haven't, muscles that I haven't used in a long time, SEO muscles, search engine, Google, muscles where I normally would contract out. You want to do that yourself. So, relearning some of that and getting up to speed on what's the best technique there and, the latest technique there has been a great learning experience and certainly has given me a lot more knowledge and, having done it and, now redone it again and again, it's been a great experience. I think the other thing that is in stark contrast, for me, coming out of a large B2B firm, whether it's tech or not, and coming into a smaller B2B firm, is that, B2B marketing is hard, right? I think we all sort of forget a little bit about that. And, reaching that target audience is not exactly easy. And, especially when you don't have the resources that you had in a larger firm, it's a lot of hard work. So I've gotten a new profound respect for, the B2B marketing trade and certainly have been polishing my trade over the last year or so.
Paul, I think those are some great insights. And considering the audience for this show tend to be smaller marketing, I think people who watch the show are used to what you moved into, which is wearing a lot of hats and doing things yourself. And in fact, my business is a small business. And as I always say, if you don't do it yourself, it doesn't get done. So that's great insight. Now, one of the things that you've talked about is an influencer strategy. What is an influencer strategy and why is it important, Paul?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I think the influencer strategy for a lot of B2B firms has changed over the last few years. You've had, some digital tools that have entered into the marketplace, things like Twitter and, Technorati and looking at people who are influencers within your sphere and or around a particular topic and reaching out to them through those tools is interesting, but it doesn't supplant the need to do the real hard work, which is, getting out there, meeting these people, pressing the flesh, maybe finding them at events or taking them to lunch or, bringing them out for drinks and getting to know them at a much more personal level. It's almost a throwback to the Mad Men era. And, like I said before, B2B marketing is hard work. You got to get out there. You got to do the do the hard things that make yourself successful. And I think that's the change in the influencer strategy as of late is just that amount of, personal interaction that I just haven't seen from a lot of firms before. And frankly, I haven't seen it a lot in the B2B space at all.
That's a really good point about influencers, Paul, because one of the things I've seen in the data a lot is that buyers rely on peers today more than they ever have before. And who influences the peers? It's the influencers out there. It's the thought leaders. That's who they listen to. So that's a very good point as to why. Now, one of the things I'd also like to ask you about is you've written books on Facebook marketing for Facebook has been in the news recently with their IPO and all the changes and the explosive growth and even press about how the numbers are fudged because not nearly all of those 850 million people go into it every day. What's going on with Facebook, Paul?
Well, Jeff, we could do a whole show just on Facebook, I'm sure. But when it comes to, I'm thinking about the theme of the show being B2B marketers, when it comes to B2B marketing, if you got a Facebook page, if you don't, first of all, you need one. And if you do, you have to be thinking about ways to engage with your clients or your prospects on that page. I mean, it's just so important. They're going to be rolling out mobile ads. They're going to be doing new ad units. That's all great stuff, and that's all in preparation for the IPO. But what you need to be thinking about is, what is that content that I can build, a steady stream of content that I can build that is going to engage with my particular audience? What do they want to talk about? What do they want to hear about? I think we've gone through 2 years of people creating a page and getting people onto their page and getting them to sign up for that page. Now what? Now you have to start to work the EdgeRank algorithm, which is the algorithm that shows people your content in their newsfeed, on their homepage. You have to start working that to your advantage. And the only way to really do that is have really engaging, really relevant content for folks. And press release is not going to cut it, right? You're going to have to come up with something a lot more engaging than that. So that would be my thought for the B2B marketers out there. Engagement, engagement, engagement.
That's apt advice, Paul. Yes, people need to engage, and I think they have to just, as you say, share really interesting content. Find stuff that people care about. I think we live in such a noisy world today that you've got to, and I think a fact of life too is social media is not going away. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and going into the mainstream. So you have to be out there. Speaking of social media, we always see new application coming out. Can you mention some tools you've seen lately that are of import to B2B marketers?
There's a number of tools out there that are getting a lot of play these days in various circles. I think you start to see the nichification of, let's say, some social networks. Things like Pinterest come to mind. I've heard a lot about them lately. And this is really sort of a tagging service, but you could become an expert in certain areas. So you may want to think about that if you've got a real vertical expertise or maybe a design expertise that you want to show off. You've got new social tools for engaging with television, right? So you've got things like GetGlue, you've got things like Miso and Viggle. These are all, second screen applications, getting very exciting from that perspective. And then you've got other tools that that are helping you with, let's say, lighter analytics around things like your Twitter feed. So something like a Social Bro comes to mind that I really like. That tells you, let's say, best time of day to tweet and when the maximum amount of people are listening. It's all good news, good things to find out, and another level down, another place to check before you actually go, put something out. Scheduling tools that you can use, whether it's TweetDeck or whether something more advanced like a Buddy Media or Vitrue. Scheduling seems to be an issue for a lot of B2B marketers, right? You don't want to be uploading 10 videos to YouTube on a Friday night, right? I mean, you want to be able to drip that out to the marketplace. That's good content marketing, and you want to be able to do that at a sort of stage metered kind of way. I think you're going to want to think about those kinds of tools. So a lot of good activity out there. Nothing is really a standout leader in the space these days, but and certainly nothing challenging Facebook except for maybe Google+.
Thanks, Paul. Those are a lot of good tools for people to look at. And I think one of the big things for B2B marketers that you just mentioned is scheduling tools. Because, you can't blast everything out at once. No one will hear. You'll just overwhelm people. And you can't sit at your computer all day and night to distribute it. So you have to be able to schedule. So those are very good tips. Now, one of the things you write this very popular blog, which is just your name, pauldunay.com, and on it you've been talking a lot about social data. And social data is just exploding. What does social data mean to B2B marketers out there and company leaders for that matter?
Well, first let's take a step back and just talk about, what is social data, right? There's so much data out there, it's incredible. I continue to be amazed by it. But if you think about the amount of data that is out on Twitter Even, most recently, the amount of data that came through on the Super Bowl from Twitter, right? The amount of data on Facebook, the amount of data on blogs, 200 million blogs, the amount of data on forums that have existed since the beginning of the internet, right? So a lot of data out there, synthesizing that data, pulling all that data in. It's all disparate data. It's all unstructured data, meaning, Facebook data does not match Twitter data, which does not match, blog and forum data, right? They're all different formats. So it needs to be brought in, neutralized, maybe cleansed, looking for spam, pulling spam out, and then queried, right? So you can imagine that this is going to be a pretty large data set. In some cases, it's terabytes, even a petabyte worth of data, which is more than the IRS has, as far as data is concerned, right? So it's a huge data file, and then looking for commonalities, trying to find out, if you're a brand, who is your audience and what do they talk about and where can best connect with them? Where could you best connect with them? What sites, what TV shows, what media do they tend to consume? It's all out there. It's all in that data set. So it's exciting to me to think about, the last couple of years, a lot of development in, let's say, the area of big data. I think you might be hearing that a little bit this year, this concept of big data and querying big data. A lot of this wouldn't be possible without these tools being available, being able to search through, 2 years worth of data or 2+ years worth of social data quickly. I'm talking in, minutes and even in seconds in some case, to pull back, either a theme, like, I don't know, if you're into, telephony, putting in that theme, finding out what comes out from an audience perspective, from a content perspective, and from a media perspective. And then if you're a leader in telephony, let's say like someone like an Apple, right, pulling out, what is that audience that really surrounds Apple, finding out what they really like. And this is a very vocal audience. Would be good to know what they're talking about and where they're talking about it. So a lot of goodness in that data. I think, B2B marketers should keep their eyes and ears open for, how they could use that data to help them make better, more informed marketing decisions, whether that's, a keyword buy, how does that audience talk about your product, whether it's a digital media buy, I want to do a banner buy, where is that audience, where do they live, where can I get to them, whether it's around your brand or around the topic that surrounds your brand, and finding out, what kind of content is going to resonate with them, because as I was saying before about social, it's all about engagement.
Good points, Paul. And I think the key point that comes from that is for the marketer out there, there's a lot of data out there. Go for it. It's from Facebook, Twitter, everything. Just go out and find the significant data in your business. So one of the things I always ask our guests on the show, and I'd like to ask you, is if there's just one takeaway that you could give a marketer, what should they be thinking about?
Well, for me, what I'm thinking is it's still the early days of social media, right? There's still a lot of testing, a lot of learning that has to happen. And I would be keeping a small side piece of my budget, on the side in order to do and test some of these new tools. Maybe you heard about a tool on this particular show that you want to try out. If it's not free, check it out. If it's a new technique, whether it's, mobile ads or whether it's, some sort of a digital ad that you want to try, or even some sort of, I don't know, location-based ad that you'd want to try, give it a shot. You got to keep testing and learning what's going to work for your particular brand. They're inventing new tools every day, and you want to be able to be at the forefront of that.
Good point on continual experimentation and just be adventurous. I think that's why it's an exciting time to be in marketing. Paul, you've been a great guest. Before we go, tell us how can people learn more about you and some of the ideas that you share with people.
Well, I love sharing my ideas on my blog, which is, very simply pauldunay, DUNAY.com, one word. And what I try to do is, as I'm learning it, write it up and get it out there within the next week or so. So whatever you're seeing on that blog is what I'm thinking within the last week. So, keep an eye out for that. And all my books and all the ebooks and any of the content that I've done at particular events are all available on that one site, pauldunay.com.
Thanks, Paul. You've been a fabulous guest on Mad Marketing TV. We're really excited to have you on the show. So I want to thank you for watching Mad Marketing TV, and we'll see you next week.